Thank you very much. It's an honor to create a family tradition. And it's also a pleasure to be at this eminent institution in this very beautiful venue. And I'd like to add my congratulations to the new inductees to Phi Beta Kappa. I guess your door prize is getting to listen to this lecture. In the beginning was the reader, and the reader went in search of an author. For the reader realized that without an author, there could be no readers. But when the reader met an author, the author, anticipating Dr. Johnson of dictionary fame, scowled, "No man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money." And the reader calculated the worth of a free supply of blockhead-written works against the value of recognizing the author's economic self-interest. She concluded that the author's interest is also her interest, that the public interest encompasses both that of authors and of readers. So she looked upon copyright and saw that it was good. This, in essence, is the philosophy that informs the 1710 English Statute of Anne, the first copyright statute, and the 1787 U.S. Constitution's Copyright Clause. The latter provides Congress shall have power to promote the progress of science by securing for limited times to authors the exclusive right to their writings. In the Anglo-American system, copyright enabled the public to have a supply of good books and other works that promote the progress of learning. Copyright did this by assuring authors the exclusive right to their writings. That is, a property right giving authors sufficient control over and compensation for their works to make it worth their while to be creative. Vesting copyright exclusively in authors rather than exploiters was an innovation in the 18th century. It made authorship the functional and moral center of the system. But all too often, in fact, authors neither control nor derive substantial benefits from their work. In the copyright polemics of today, moreover, authors are curiously absent. The overheated rhetoric that currently characterizes much of the academic and popular press tends to portray copyright as a battleground between evil industry exploiters and free-speaking users. If authors have any role in this scenario, it is at most a walk-on, a cameo appearance as victims of monopolist content owners. The disappearance of the author, moreover, justifies disrespect for copyright. After all, those illegally downloading youths, none present in this establishment surely, aren't ripping off the authors and performers. The major record companies have already done the ripping off for them. Two encroachments, one long-standing, the other a product of the digital era, cramp the author's place in copyright today. First, most authors lack bargaining power. The real economic actors in the copyright system have long been the publishers and other exploiters to whom authors cede their rights. These actors may advance the figure of the author for the moral luster it lends their appeal to lawmakers, but then may promptly despoil the creators of whatever increased protections they may have garnered. Second, the advent of new technologies of creation and dissemination of works of authorship not only challenges traditional revenue models, but also calls into question whatever artistic control the author may retain over her work. I will examine both prongs of the pincers, and then will suggest some reasons for optimism for the future. Copyright vests in a work's creator as soon as she fixes it in any tangible medium of expression, that is, writes it down, records it onto tape, or a hard or flash drive. But for many authors, ownership is quickly divested, and for some it never attaches at all. The latter group of creators are employees for hire, salaried authors who create works in pursuit of their employment, or freelancers who are commissioned to create certain kinds of works and who sign a contract specifying that the work will be for hire. An author who is not an employee for hire starts out with rights that she may transfer by contract. Thus, it is possible for a U.S. author, quote, for good and valuable consideration, which could be the mere fact of disseminating the work, to assign, and again I quote, all right, title, and interest in and to the work in all media, now known or later developed, for the full term of copyright, including any renewals and extensions thereof, for the full territory which shall be the universe. And I am not making this up. The Raj Shast New Yorker Ultimate Contract cartoon was not so far off in further specifying, and even if one day they find a door in the universe that leads to a whole new non-universe place, or everything falls into a black hole so nobody knows which end is up and we're all dead anyway, so who cares, we'll still own all those rights. It's no accident that the U.S. copyright law and the copyright law of other common law countries makes it easy for authors to give rights away. Our legal system frowns on restraints on alienation. Perhaps ironically, the ability freely to part with property is the hallmark of its ownership. That this works to the benefit of the so-called content owners could traditionally be justified as consistent with the overall goals of the copyright scheme. These are not only to promote the care and feeding of authors, but also, many would contend primarily, to ensure the dissemination of works of authorship. After all, the constitutional goal to promote the progress of science is not met merely by creating works. Someone has to get them from the author's pen or laptop into the public's hands. To the extent that authors retard that process by endeavoring to withhold some rights or make it more expensive by demanding more pay for rights granted, authors can seem like pesky interlopers. Australian writer Miles Franklin, best known for her novel My Brilliant Career, captured this annoyance in Bring the Monkey, her 1932 parody of the English country house murder mystery. The conversation she imagined among members of Britain's budding motion picture industry anticipates today's motion picture and television producers' resistance to screenwriters' demands for higher royalty participation in new media platforms. Miles Franklin wrote, they, the movie moguls, were generally agreed that the total elimination of the author would be a tremendous advance. Authors, said the gentleman, are the bummest lot of cranks I have ever been up against. Why the heck they aren't content to beat it once they get a price for their stuff gets my goat. There was ready agreement that authors were a wanton tax on any industry, whether publishing, drama, or pictures. That is why I want you to see my film. One reason, the film producer said suavely. It has been assembled by experts in the industry, not by some wayward outsider. We have replaced the author with continuity experts and producers. A copyright law for continuity experts also known today as reality television coordinators. That is a vision to spur illegal downloading as civil disobedience. Let's strike a blow for authors by stealing from the corporations that fleece them. We can further sweeten self-serving on the web when we realize that not only has the author already been divested, she has in fact long been dead. The death of the author, announced in literary theory, has produced a syllogism in copyright rhetoric. Copyright is a consequence of the romantic conception of authorship. Romantic authorship is dead. Therefore, copyright is or should be dead too. If the author is dead, or must be dethroned, then the reader not only lives but reigns supreme. Readers give meaning to the texts they peruse. Reading itself becomes a creative act. The internet gives concrete effect to the theory of reader as creator, for all readers can remanipulate the text and none can impose unilateral significance. In this techno-postmodernist view, the author may be dead because individual creativity is discredited. As one pundit predicted in the Paleolithic early 1990s, authorship is becoming polyvocal, increasingly collective, and collaborative. With the increasing Wikipediaification of content, the wisdom of crowds overtakes individual expertise in the production of works that everyone can pitch in to create, add to, or modify. In the context of copyright, if creativity is so dispersed, then no one can claim to have originated a work of authorship, so perhaps no one can fairly own a copyright either. Moreover, if the rationale for copyright is incentive to produce and distribute works, the internet may have topped up our supply of Johnsonian blockheads. In addition to the poets who burn with inner fire, for whom creation is allegedly its own reward, and in addition to others, such as law professors, for whom other gainful employment permits authorial altruism, we now have internet exhibitionists, call them bloggers, and crowdsources, masses of incremental contributors whose participation, whether occasional or obsessive, may contradict the Johnsonian calculus. These creators, even if individually identifiable, may not need the carrot of exclusive rights in order to produce works of authorship. Copyright, then, is not only a wasteful windfall, it somehow degrades the noble calling of disinterested creativity. That the author, if still living, metaphorically and actually, should not look to her writings for material sustenance is not a new idea. In the 18th century Battle of the Booksellers, Lord Camden belittled writing for profit. "Glory is the reward of science," he thundered, "and those who deserve it scorn all meaner views. It was not for gain that Bacon, Newton, Milton, Locke instructed and delighted the world. It would be unworthy of such men to traffic with a dirty bookseller for so much a sheet of letterpress." Given the rise of the professional author in the 18th century, this outburst was retrograde even in its day. As the historian Catherine Macaulay then wryly observed, the unpaid bills of the sordid butchers and bakers are evils which the sublime flights of poetic fancy do not always soar above. Regarding authorship in the digital era, I believe that the reports of the death of the professional author have been greatly exaggerated. I doubt neither that the web vastly enlarges the numbers of people who commit acts of authorship, nor that digital media promote new kinds of authorship, from wikis to mashups to fanzines to kinetic graphics to blogs and beyond. Professional authorship will persist, I believe, I hope, whether because we still value individual genius, or at least expertise, and or because not all readers will want to be participatory all the time. Recombinant and instant authorship may or may not be passing fancies. Those whom I will dare to call real authors will still be with us. Moreover, they will be joined by a host of newcomers, for example, as bloggers become novelists or write book-length nonfiction or simply persist in their online endeavors. At least real authors will remain as long as the writing and other creative trades furnish adequate remuneration. As my former colleague, legal philosopher Jeremy Waldron put it, the author may be dead, but she still responds to economic incentives. The question for the future of copyright and for the author's place in it is how to make those incentives meaningful for creators. Some of the same factors that today cause copyright to be derided may also come to the aid of individual creators. The technology that brings works directly to users' computers and personal portable devices no longer requires traditional publishing's infrastructure of intermediaries. Maybe every reader is not truly an author, but every author can be a publisher. At least every computer-equipped author can make her work directly available to her audience via the internet. But availing oneself of the means of distribution is one thing. Making a living from the works one distributes is another, particularly when the media that empower authors also empower users to acquire and disseminate works for free. To an increasing extent, every author can employ electronic copyright management and/or copyright management collectives to set the financial and other terms and conditions for access to and copying of her work. Or, more rudimentarily, she can make the work available without technological restraints and appeal to user generosity. Though, as Radiohead and Stephen King discovered, passing the hat may prove a precarious strategy. Free distribution can, of course, enhance the author's fame, but if the author cannot capitalize on her fame by exploiting her copyrights, then she will not have made much progress. As a practical matter, the future of copyright for professional authors is likely to depend on the development of consumer-friendly payment and protection mechanisms. I am not sanguine about the non-copyright alternatives, most of which involve giving the copyrighted work away as a loss leader to get consumers to spend money on something else whose supply the author can control. This is sometimes called the Grateful Dead model. I sell my song for a song, but make you pay real money for the t-shirts that allow you to express your affection for my band. This assumes, counterfactually, that the demand for bundled goods or services is infinitely expandable, and even more counterfactually, that it is applicable to all kinds of works of authorship. For example, the public may be willing to purchase some successful performer's allegiance goods, but whoever heard of the songwriter whose works the singer performs? Much less would be interested in paying to blazon her name across his chest. Or bundling services with intellectual content may work well for software, for which helplines can be an essential adjunct, but I see less prospect for a post-sale warranty for a poem. Copyright is not just about getting paid. It is also about maintaining control, both economic and artistic, over the fate of the work. J.K. Rowling has chosen to end the Harry Potter series with The Deathly Hallows. Her copyright entitles her to keep Harry from matriculating at medical school, or for that matter, turning into an axe murderer. Unless J.K. Rowling changes her mind, there will not be an 8th Harry Potter novel. On the other hand, Rowling is unlikely to succeed if she even tries in shutting down the innumerable websites in which techno-postmodernist fans, or detractors, are sharing their variously guileless or perverse versions of the series. For example, the Harry Potter fanfiction.com site alone claims over, or almost, at last viewing, 70,000 unofficial Harry Potter stories from over 30,000 authors. Rowling's copyright will cut off the commercial prospects of these stories, as her successful suit against the Harry Potter lexicon showed. On the other hand, the commercial, non-commercial distinction may be increasingly elusive on the web. I'm not sure what would be the desirable or feasible response to this kind of public appropriation of works of authorship. Some years ago, an internet guru pronounced, "You have no privacy on the net. Get over it." Well, authors just have to get over their apparent inability to maintain the integrity of their creations. Other developments, however, suggest that the web may not create an ineluctably hostile environment for authors' reputational interests in their works. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit upheld the enforceability of the artistic license provisions of an online open-source free software licensing agreement. This agreement obliged users of the software to give name credit to the licensing creator and to mark off any modifications the licensees may make to the program. I infer that one reason for requiring that the person who modifies the software own up to her alterations is to protect the original author from being tarred with the brush of the second author's potentially ill-conceived or badly executed changes to the underlying program. The agreement does not seek to prevent alterations, but merely to ensure that the original creator is not associated with them. The world of open source licensing, however, may not offer an appealing template to authors of other kinds of works. For one thing, other authors may not want their works to become a continuous collaborative project. They may prefer not only credit for their creations, but also to preserve their works as they created them. Indeed, credit and artistic integrity are deeply rooted intuitions. It's no accident that over 75% of the photos posted to Flickr bear the Creative Commons NC, non-commercial, and or ND, no derivatives icons. Creators, even amateur creators, indeed sometimes especially amateur creators, can be very possessive about their work. They may be willing to make it available for free, but they don't want other people making money off of it, and they don't want other people changing it. Failing effective protection of their work's integrity, some authors may at least seek to extract a price for foregoing pristine conservation. It may be cynical to suggest that one can bear having one's artistic vision mangled so long as the mangling occurs all the way to the bank. To the extent that the observation is true, it brings us back to payment. One way to make money is by selling copies of or access to works of authorship, if possible, notwithstanding the availability of unauthorized means of copying, such as peer-to-peer file sharing. Another way is advertising, and the big recent copyright battles, notably Viacom's suit against Google YouTube, have really been about who gets what cut of the advertising revenue. But the advertising revenue can also go to authors, assuming that they retain the relevant copyright interests. Those Harry Potter fan sites carry a lot of ads, including those placed by Google. I don't know whether J.K. Rowling licenses the sites and participates in the advertising revenue, but if she wanted a share, she probably would have a good claim against the websites and maybe even against Google, although that's a longer shot. Will authors retain the relevant copyright interests to benefit from authorized internet exploitations? Those who self-publish will, but publishers can still add value, particularly in credibility and publicity. So many authors will still want intermediary distributors. Perhaps less celebrated authors would be better off abandoning any pretense to copyright ownership in exchange for legislation substituting mandatory percentages of royalty distribution to works creators. That, however, is a desperate solution, which authors could come to regret if technology and business models develop in a way that resistance to unreasonable publisher demands is not, in fact, futile. In that spirit, I'd like to conclude with a tour of a website, assuming I can get it up. There we go. keepyourcopyrights.org, which the Kernighan Center for Law, Media, and the Arts and the Center for Law and Technology at Columbia Law School, where I teach, have launched in the hope of bringing back some power to the people who create works of authorship. The website's credo, over here, is a creator forewarned is a creator forearmed. As the website explains, today, too many creators take a passive attitude toward their copyrights. The matter seems complex, and publishers or distributors may tell you that everyone does it their way, or that giving up copyrights is standard practice. But giving up your rights under copyright is a decision, not a default option. If you stand passively by, you may, over the course of a long creative career, produce a large body of work, most of which is owned and controlled by other people whose interests and yours may diverge. In case you're looking for that text, that's the text I just quoted. Right. The site offers basic information about copyright with links to more information, notably resources that you might find helpful, and most importantly, a catalog of contracts which we have rated in a variety of ways. So if you go to the contract side of the website, you will see our handy-dandy rating system, right, which is, there are some contracts, there really are some, which are creator-friendly and therefore get the green thumbs up. There is a larger category of yellow thumb in equipoise, could be worse. The orange thumb down for creator unfriendly. As you can imagine, this is like a reverse funnel where the categories keep having more entries in them as we become less author friendly. And perhaps the largest category, designated by the big red claw, for incredibly overreaching. So we have taken the contract language and we translate it. I'll give you. We translate it into regular English, and we rate the clause by how greedy it is. And so let's give you an example. if this category is general assignment of copyright, so by definition, it's going to be creator unfriendly because it takes everything. And let's give you a short one. Okay, so here you've got the official contract language, which is highlighted in gray, right? So this is the legalese. And then we've got the normal English translation that tells you, if you sign this, what have you just done? And this particular language gives the publisher all the author's rights in the work, including the right to turn the article, because it was a general magazine, an article into a book, all foreign language rights, and any other conceivable way of making money from the article anywhere in the world for as long as the copyright lasts. Right? So that's pretty broad. That corresponds to you grant the right to print, publish, license, distribute, and/or market, either directly or where applicable by third parties, any marketable right associated with the work. So that's pretty alienating in the Marxist sense. Well, it's not all bad news. In order to give you some sense that fighting back can help, we have a before and after section where we have actual contracts with the names of the parties guilty or otherwise removed, and to give you a sense of what the starting position was and what the author ended up with. As you've seen, many magazine contracts can be a tad overreaching. This one was no exception, at least in its initial position. So it provided, you agree to grant to magazine all rights, including but not limited to, all right, title, and interest throughout the world, and the right to procure copyrights in the United States and America and throughout the world, it being agreed that these are works made for hire. Now remember that a work made for hire is the most absolute way of divesting an author, because if it's a work made for hire, not only does the creator not have any rights at all, ever, but under the copyright law, the creator isn't even the author of the work. The copyright statute considers that the employer for hire is the, quote, author. So this is about the most excessive type of contract that you can sign, because it means that you sign this and you are a zero. So that was the starting position. And after the author, who knew better, said, you really don't need all of these rights, and you do not need to alienate me from the fruits of my production, they agreed on the following. You agree to grant the magazine a non-exclusive license to the work to exercise any and all of the rights granted by the copyright law throughout the world in any media now known, that's a typo, or later developed. Now, what does that mean in plain English? What that means is that you've given the magazine lots and lots of rights. So they can do translations, they can do new versions, they can exploit the work in lots and lots of ways. But the key word here is non-exclusive. And what that means is that the author can also exploit all those rights or authorize other people to exploit all their rights. And as a practical matter, what will happen if you fight back is that the publisher, particularly in the magazine world, might insist on, say, a 6-month exclusive or a 1-year exclusive, and then either give you the copyright back or share the copyright in this way. In this case, the author was able to negotiate not even an embargo period. So from the outset, it was a non-exclusive grant. So that's really a big plus. And of course, the author gets paid, but we don't disclose what the amount of money that changed hands was, which is dealing with the rights issues and not with the amount of payment. But we have put this up here as an incentive to demonstrate that if you are forewarned, you are forearmed, and most publishers, not all, but most, just assume that you're ignorant and grateful. and you're so happy that they want to publish you that you'll practically pay them to do it. And then they capitalize on that by making you sign these kinds of agreements, or they say everybody does it that way. But it's not true. Not everybody does it that way, and almost every publisher has sort of the opening position contract, and then you put that on top of the desk, and then you open the first drawer below, and that's got version A, which is a little more generous to the author, and the author sticks to her guns, and you pull out the next drawer, and there's version B. So in fact, there's much more flexibility than publishers, by which I mean intermediary exploiters, not just in the print world, want to let on. And our objective here is to let people know that those alternatives are possible, and where possible to hold out for them, because we think that if authors continue to have an interest in their copyrights in the long run, that does promote the progress of knowledge to which the U.S. Constitution and our system aspire. Thank you very much.